Two grown children are sitting in a lawyer's office 3 weeks after their father's funeral, and they are about to hear a sentence that will not make sense to them. I'll call them Dana and Mike. Their dad, I'll call him Ray, did everything right, or so they believed. Ray had a will, a real one, drawn up by a real attorney. And that will said something simple and clear. Everything I have goes to my 2 kids, split evenly. Dana and Mike had read it. They weren't worried about the money. They were just trying to get through the grief. And then the lawyer looks up from the paperwork and says, "I have to tell you something about your father's retirement account and his life insurance. Those don't go to you." Dana actually laughs because she thinks she's misheard. The will says everything goes to us. She has it right there in her bag. And the lawyer, gently, explains that the will has nothing to do with it, that the biggest chunk of Ray's money, well over $300,000 between his 401k and his life insurance, is about to be paid out in full to a woman named Linda. Linda is Ray's first wife. They divorced more than 30 years ago. Dana was a toddler. Mike doesn't remember her at all. Ray hadn't spoken to her in 3 decades. He raised these 2 kids by himself. And he is about to leave her everything that mattered, and there is nothing in that will, nothing any lawyer can do, that will stop it. How? How does a 30-year-old divorce, a clear will, and a devoted father end with the ex-wife getting the money and the kids getting almost nothing? That is what this video is about. Because there is one form, one piece of paper most people sign once and never think about again, that quietly overrules your parents' will completely. It decides where the majority of their money actually goes. And almost nobody checks it until they're sitting in that lawyer's office, hearing a name they didn't expect. So here's my promise for the next 20 minutes. You'll understand exactly what that form is and why it beats the will every single time. You'll see the trap that caught Ray, the one that even divorce doesn't fix. You'll see 3 other ways this same form quietly wrecks families, including one that turns siblings into enemies. And you'll know exactly how to check this for your own parents in a single afternoon while it can still be fixed, because once your parent is gone, this locks forever. But first, the honesty I always owe you, because trust is the only thing that matters on a channel like this. Ray, Dana, Mike, and Linda are composites. I've changed the names and the details, and I've built their story from the real, documented ways this happens to families every single day. Nothing here is exaggerated, and I am not your attorney. These rules vary by state, and they change over time, so treat this as the map, not the legal directions. The person who draws the directions for your family is a certified elder law or estate attorney, and I'll tell you when you need one. Okay, let's start with the form. Here is the thing almost nobody understands until it's too late. Your parents' will does not control all of their money. It might not even control most of it. Some of the biggest assets a person owns, retirement accounts like a 401k or an IRA, life insurance policies, annuities, and certain bank and investment accounts, do not pass through the will at all. Instead, each of those accounts has its own little instruction attached to it called a beneficiary designation. It's the form your parent filled out, usually on the day they opened the account, that names the person who gets that money when they die. And here is the rule that changes everything. When there is a valid beneficiary form on an account, that form overrides the will. Every time, the money skips the will entirely. It skips probate, the court process, entirely. It goes straight to whoever is named on that form, no matter what the will says, no matter what your parent told you, no matter what everyone in the family agreed was supposed to happen. The financial institution looks at one thing, the name on the form, and they pay it. Now sit with the scale of this for a second, because it's the part that makes it so dangerous. For most American families, retirement accounts and life insurance aren't a side dish. They're the main course. They make up the majority of the wealth that gets passed down, which means the will, the document everyone treats as the final word, often doesn't control the biggest pieces at all. Those pieces are controlled by a form your parent may have signed decades ago and never looked at again. That's how a clear will loses. It never even gets to weigh in. So let's go back to Ray and find the form that beat his will. When Ray was a young man, newly married to Linda, he started a job. And on his first week, like all of us, he filled out a stack of paperwork. One of those papers was the beneficiary form for his retirement plan. He did the natural thing. He wrote down his wife, Linda. Then, life happened. The marriage ended. Ray got custody, raised Dana and Mike, built a life. Years later, he sat down with an attorney and wrote a will, leaving everything to his children. He thought he had handled it. He had handled the will. He never went back and changed that one old form from his first week on the job because he didn't know it was still sitting there, silently naming Linda, frozen in time. And here's the part that catches almost everyone by surprise, the part I really need you to hear. Getting divorced did not fix it. Most people assume that when you divorce someone, they automatically lose any claim to your accounts. Sometimes, for some assets in some states that's true, a number of states do automatically remove an ex-spouse from certain designations, but you cannot count on it. And it generally does not apply to employer retirement plans like Ray's 401k, because those are governed by federal law. And federal law does not automatically remove an ex-spouse when you divorce. The U.S. Supreme Court has actually ruled on this more than once, and the result was the same. The ex-spouse named on the form collected the money, even over a current spouse, even over the children. The form was never updated, so the form won. Linda won. Not because anyone intended it, because a piece of paper from the 1980s outlived the marriage, the divorce, and the will. And before I show you the other ways this wrecks families, let me talk to one person directly. If your mom or dad is alive and well right now, everything in this video is still completely fixable for your family, today, this week. The entire tragedy of Ray's story is that it was frozen the moment he died, and not 1 second before. While he was alive, fixing it would have taken him about 15 minutes and a phone call. So whatever else you take from this, take that. This is the rare problem you can actually solve in an afternoon, but only while your parent is still here. Now, the divorce trap is just one way this form turns on a family. Let me show you 3 more because they're more common than you'd think. The first is the empty form. Sometimes a parent never names a beneficiary at all, or they named one person who has since died, and they never named a backup, what's called a contingent beneficiary. When that happens, the money has nowhere to go, so it falls back into the estate and into probate, the exact slow, public, expensive court process that naming a beneficiary was supposed to avoid. So the absence of a form causes its own disaster. The fix is simple. Always name a primary beneficiary and at least one backup, but only if someone catches it in time. The second is the convenience trap, and this one quietly destroys siblings. A parent decides it's simpler to name just one child on the account, the responsible one, the one who lives nearby, with a spoken understanding that you'll split it with your brother and sister. Here's the problem. That spoken understanding is worth nothing. When the money lands, it legally belongs to the one child named on the form. Completely. They are under no legal obligation to share a penny. Most of the time, good people do the right thing, but sometimes they don't. And even when they do, splitting it can create its own tax complications. Either way, the parent didn't leave their children equal shares. They left it all to one and hoped. That hope is where a lot of families crack in half. The third is the minor trap. A loving grandparent names a young grandchild directly as the beneficiary of an account or a life insurance policy. It feels like a gift, but a minor child cannot legally receive that money directly. So instead of a smooth handoff, a court usually has to step in to control the funds until the child becomes an adult, and then, the moment they hit 18 or 21, the entire sum is handed over to them, all at once, with no guardrails at all. A teenager with a check for $100,000 and no guidance is not the gift anyone intended. The fix is to name a properly set-up trust instead of the child, but only an attorney-guided plan gets that right. And one more wrinkle worth a sentence. In community property states, a spouse may have legal rights to certain assets no matter what the beneficiary form says, which is yet another reason this is a conversation for a professional, not a guess. Now here's something that catches families even when the right person is named, a tax trap that arrived with a law most people have never heard of. It used to be that if you inherited a parent's retirement account, you could draw it down slowly over your whole life, letting it grow, keeping the tax bill small each year. That's mostly gone now. Under the current rules, most adult children who inherit a parent's IRA or 401k have to empty the entire account within 10 years, and every dollar that comes out of a traditional retirement account counts as ordinary income, taxable. So an adult child who inherits a large account can find themselves forced to pull out big chunks during their highest earning years, pushing them into a higher tax bracket and handing a real slice of the inheritance to the IRS. The money still comes to them, but how the account is set up and how thoughtfully it's drawn down can be the difference between keeping that inheritance and taxing a chunk of it away. It's one more reason the beneficiary form deserves a real conversation, not a signature and 30 years of silence. So let's finish Ray's story. Could Dana and Mike fix it after the fact? No. And that's the cruelest word in this whole subject. Locked. The instant Ray died, every beneficiary form he ever signed turned to stone. No will could override it. No judge could fix it out of fairness. No heartfelt letter from his kids could change it. Linda was named, so Linda was paid. The window to fix it had closed at the exact moment the family needed it open. The same pattern you've seen in everything we've covered. While Ray was alive, it was a 15-minute errand. After he was gone, it was impossible. You don't have to leave your family in that lawyer's office. Here is the plan, and it's genuinely doable. First, help your parent build the list. Every account that has a beneficiary form attached, every retirement account, every 401k and IRA, every life insurance policy, every annuity, and any bank or investment account set up to pay on death. You can't check forms you don't know exist, so the list comes first. Second, find out who is actually named on each one, not who your parent thinks is named. This is the step that would have saved Ray's family. While your parent is alive, they can contact each institution and request the current beneficiary designation in writing. Some let you check online in minutes. You are looking for exactly the ghost that haunted Ray, an ex-spouse, a deceased relative, a blank or a single name where there should be several. Third, update anything that's wrong and always name a backup. Submitting a new form usually takes minutes. And make sure every account names both a primary beneficiary and at least one contingent beneficiary, so an empty form never sends the money to probate. Fourth, for any situation that's more delicate than, give it straight to a competent adult, a minor, a child with special needs, a child who struggles with money, or a desire to truly split things evenly and safely. Name a properly drafted trust as the beneficiary instead of a person, with an attorney's help. This is exactly where a fill-in-the-blank form fails and a professional earns their fee. Fifth, make sure the forms and the will actually agree with each other, and keep a master list of every account and its named beneficiary stored with your parents' important papers. The whole disaster comes from the will and the forms saying different things. Get them aligned and revisit them after every major life event: a marriage, a divorce, a death, a new grandchild. Here's the reframe to carry out of all this. Of everything in your parents' estate plan, the beneficiary forms are the highest leverage thing in the entire stack, because a few minutes of work controls the majority of the money. The will gets all the attention. The forms do most of the work, and almost nobody checks them. You can be the person in your family who does. So if you remember one thing from everything we've covered, let it be this: the will is not the final word. The forms are. Your parent could have the most perfect will ever written, and it can be quietly overruled by a single piece of paper they forgot existed. So don't check the will and assume you're done. Check the forms. If your family has lived through a version of this, a name no one expected, a will that lost to a form, tell me in the comments, because someone is reading this right now, wondering whether they should make an awkward phone call to their parents this weekend, and your story might be the thing that gets them to make it. And here's where we go next. Beneficiary forms let money skip probate. That slow, public, expensive court process I keep mentioning. But most families have no idea what probate actually is, how long it really takes, or how much of the inheritance it can quietly eat before anyone sees a dime. There are a handful of completely legal ways to keep your parents' estate out of it almost entirely, and a few common mistakes that drag a family straight into it for a year or more. That's the next video. If you'd rather your family inherit money than inherit a court case, watch it before you assume probate is just paperwork. Because it's a lot more than that.